going on, Internet? Hope you guys are all doing awesome out there. I know it's been a while, and I apologize. I've just been really busy, and my eyes are still super jacked up, so I can't do a lot of just consumption of news or media, other stuff, etc. But I do try and stay in the loop. And today, I just want to give you guys a brief little bit of story time. So, as you guys know, I myself have obviously purchased an AMD Ryzen system. 1700 is what chip I'm currently running, and very, very happy as a mainstream consumer to be running an 8-core, 16-thread, 4 gigahertz CPU with awesome IPC and just incredible multitasking ability. Again, I run this chip. I can't do a lot of computing right now or gaming because of my eyes, but I let this thing sit here and run, folding at home, different, programs to help out with things like cancer and AIDS research, etc. And that maxes the CPU cores out at 100%. And I can still go on the computer when that's happening, browse the internet, do my word processing, my regular, computer type, things. And I'll be honest with you, I can barely even notice that is happening in the background, which is mind-boggling. To have a CPU that is 100% saturated, to the hilt, all logical cores, all 16 of them, all physical cores with SMT, all cranking out, at maximum ability, and then to be able to go on, on top of that, and use the computer and have it be, faster still, even while that's going on, than 99% of the computers still on the planet. Just with, and general usability is insane. So that's where I'm at right now. You guys know, there's pending releases for, Threadripper, AMD, and the mobile market with, chips that I am so excited for. They showed off at Computex recently a sub 15 millimeter, 2-in-1 tablet, notebook PC that was super thin and light, had a quad-core, 8-thread, Zen-based CPU with Vega integrated graphics. I'm waiting to buy, some kind of a slim form factor. I hope Microsoft puts that, in their new Surface lineup eventually. That'd be awesome. I'd love to see that chip, in my hands sometime in the near future. Again, Threadripper looks awesome. Should be a phenomenal value to consumers. And in the server market, AMD is going to crush it. They've got, a lot of things going their way. So with that being said, I may still do a funny kind of impersonation video of the Intel CEO with an AMD hidden camera over the last, year or two, which I think you guys are going to find pretty hilarious. I know I do. But I'm going to start off here with a little bit of story time, and I won't take it, too much of your time today. But to start things off, a few years ago, and you guys, that follow the PC industry know this. AMD was doing very poorly with regard to their CPU market share in every segment of the market. This goes from, embedded, super low power solutions all the way to the data center, in terms of, core count and TDP, etc. And, it was due to a couple of things. For one, the architecture that they have had, going back for years now, has just been inferior to Intel's. The instructions per clock, kind of splitting up, cores, integer cores with a single floating point core on their pile driver and bulldozer products. Left some things to be desired in terms of performance in certain areas, and they did have some good value in certain segments, but they've really had super low market share, and the company's value in terms of stock has been super low. The lowest it's been in the history of the company for a while. It's been down in the mud. Today, during story time, I'm going to tell you why I've been telling everybody I know, and if I had any money myself, I would do the same, to buy AMD stock for about the past year. And the writing has been on the wall. A lot of people out there are, doubters and haters. But as the story goes, a few years ago, again, AMD had, very little market share. They had a very poor architecture compared to their rival Intel. And also, the second thing that they lacked, or lagged behind in rather, was the manufacturing or the fabrication process. Intel has been on, 14 nanometer for a while now, and AMD was on 28 nanometer, and you don't get the same efficiency out of a part that's twice as large. Not that that's physical dimensions. Anyway. The manufacturing process that Intel had was just more advanced, and there's argument there still for Intel's advantage in terms of manufacturing process. But the fact of the matter is, you now have parity. They are both working on manufacturing chips based on 14 nanometer technology, and this is where the story gets interesting. You have a guy named Jim Keller. Jim Keller is a very, very supremely smart individual. He's responsible, you guys seen any of my previous videos where I actually could do research and look and put up graphics and stuff like that. You would have seen that he was responsible for engineering, for really architecting a lot of AMD's previous design wins. Not that AMD has many, but the AMD Athlon 64 was the first 64-bit processor in the world. As far as an x86 64-bit, consumer level product that existed. The AMD Athlon 64X2 was the first multi-core, dual-core, again, x86, CPU in the world. And, he'd been gone for a long time. AMD has had real issues retaining, engineering talent with the likes of Intel offering, smart engineers a lot more money because they have a lot more money in their budget to give to these engineers. Same thing, there's a lot of competition from people like, Google, NVIDIA, other companies that are creating proprietary technology. They want these really smart engineers on their team, and Jim Keller was a very sought-after individual for that purpose. Now, I don't know how AMD did it, but somebody along the line recognized that, hey, if we are going to survive as a company, we got to do a number of things. The first thing AMD did was they went out and they rehired this guy, Jim Keller, which, again, I don't know how they got this guy. I don't know if they promised him something after the grave, some mansion in heaven or something like that. But they got him long enough to design the architecture called Zen. And Zen was this crazy pipe dream that AMD had where they said, hey, we want to optimize manufacturing cost. We want to optimize, the ability to basically, add or take away, and as modular of a design as possible to make it as easy as possible for us to scale up or scale down these CPU cores, and to do that for, again, all the way from the low power, lower core count embedded markets, all the way up to the highest power consumption, highest core count parts in the data center. And they did that. They got this guy and obviously other very smart engineers to start working on Zen. And Zen, they showed in their material year and a half ago or so, they said, hey, we've got a huge, mountain to climb here with respect to competition in the consumer CPU market, in the CPU market in general, and x86 CPUs, again, the entire segment of the market. We have a huge mountain to climb against, Intel, our primary competitor, current monopoly, if you will, in this CPU market. And so, they got started and they created these architecture for these chips. And they also went out and they got rid, and this is a while back, they shedded the weight of owning their own fabrication manufacturing plants. Now, Intel is huge. So they still own and they operate their own manufacturing facilities. And for them, that's great. To have your own facilities, you are eliminating a middleman there. You are, helping to reduce costs, in this case, profits for Intel, which they're all about. And that's fine. But, AMD has worked with companies, primarily global foundries, over the past few years. They have a WSA, a wafer supply agreement with global foundries, saying that they need to commit to production of X amount of, chips off of global foundries production lines, during these years, etc. And they have amended that in the past, 6 months or a year, to basically allow them, if need be, to use other manufacturers such as, Taiwanese Semiconductor, TSMC, Samsung, which works closely with global foundries, etc. But the bottom line is, AMD is not tied to any particular manufacturer or their own manufacturing limitations. Whereas Intel certainly could go and hire, a different company and pay them to manufacture their chips. Intel's not going to do that. They're way too prideful, and they've got a ton of money invested in their own R&D, their own fabrication, manufacturing, plants, etc., and technologies. And they are both stuck on 14 nanometer technology right now. So we have parity there. In terms of manufacturing process, we have parity. And this Zen architecture, crazy as it may have been, back, in the day, a little seed planted in the mind of some crazy CEO person over there at AMD, probably before Sexy Sue, as some caller, got there. I forget who the prior, AMD CEO was, but during the inception and planning phases for this new CPU architecture to kind of take back market share from Intel, again, it was ludicrous to think it was possible. And I'm sure the people at Intel thought it was funny too, if they got wind of it somehow and they had spies in there and they thought, AMD is going to try and have an architecture for x86 CPUs that scales from low power to the data center. They must be nuts. They haven't had a good product in forever. Let them give it a shot, and we'll just tick and tock our way along, charging consumers, more money, and basically coming out with new chipsets, extremely incremental gains in terms of what the end user experience and performance of their products have been. At least in my opinion, relative to what they could have done if competition were pushing them forward. And it's unfortunate that we didn't have that environment as consumers, but AMD has really rectified that for us in the last 6 months. And they did that with the launch of Ryzen, and they have regained a ton of market share. I highly recommend, if you guys have, a dollar or $10,000 lying around, that you take your money and you invest it in AMD. Now, again, I'm going to tell you why. It's that the two things I just told you about. Architecturally, they are up to snuff with Intel. They perform extremely well, these Zen cores, and that's going to happen all the way, from, again, low power to the data center. That's going to happen in all of their chips. The IPC is there. The efficiency is even greater than what Intel is offering. And, their platform longevity is profound. You're going to be able to upgrade an AM4 motherboard or a Threadripper motherboard. Theoretically in the mobile space, I know those things are less upgradable by design, but these sockets in the server market even, you're going to be able to put newer and newer technologies from AMD, newer CPUs, more efficient CPUs, higher core count CPUs, greater IPC CPUs for the next 4 or 5 years, whereas Intel really doesn't offer that. They've gotten so accustomed to just screwing the consumer every 6 months for a new chipset, a couple more PCI Express lanes, and tiny gains in efficiency or IPC or clock speed or whatever, and they're having some real problems right now. Over at Intel, things are hot. And I mean, they are hot-headed right now because they don't know what to do. They have been caught with their pants down, out of left field, whatever you want to call it. But AMD has blindsided them, flat out. They never saw it coming. They're stumbling because somebody in the crowd just threw a haymaker to the side of Intel's face, and they're stumbling around wondering what the hell they're going to do. They don't even know. I mean, they know where the shot came from, and it's big boy AMD that apparently has been working out, taking karate classes for the past few years, because Intel is stumbling around like, they're in a daze. They got some hothead people over there right now that are furious about this, that are scrambling, trying to get new products out the door with their, socket 2066 X299 platform, trying to squeeze really, the mainstream consumers onto that platform by offering skylake-x, which is a joke. Kaby Lake, they've had issues with heat. Variants on those huge spikes in heat. They've even come out and said, Intel themselves, representatives have come out and said, if you have a Kaby Lake part, even one of the overclockable, the K series, on a mainstream motherboard, not to overclock those chips, even though they're selling them, marketing them toward overclockers. They say, don't overclock these chips. It's dangerous. It's going to get too hot, etc. Recent reviews of the new, skylake-x parts on this new platform, their, high-end desktop platform, have shown huge power consumption. You've got 10-core, 20-thread parts taking up over 400 watts of power under certain load, case scenarios, which is that's insane. You've got temperatures that are out of control, that are requiring, every day, not that a high-end desktop consumer would be afraid to use a custom water solution or a custom cooling solution, custom liquid-cooled solution. But the fact that that's basically required for these chips is insane. And it's not very good. It's egg on the face of Intel. The fact that they cannot keep these chips in check in terms of heat or in terms of power consumption. to be honest with you guys, they are today's laughingstock. Intel is having, a bunch of fingers pointed at it by all of the people in the tech community that know what the hell is going on. And that is because they've been beat. You've seen Adored. I love that guy. I haven't even watched the video, unfortunately, but I saw, where he said, Intel, you've been beaten recently. The guy had like 100,000 views, which is awesome. Super happy for that guy. He's getting recognition for doing his homework like he always does, and bringing the real deal to the people. And I'm sure what he said is what I'm saying right now, is that they are beaten. Intel is going to be beaten with a cane all the way from low power up to the data center. And, like I say, if you've got money, put it in AMD stock. There's a picture right here on my left monitor over here that I just saw, and I was very happy to see this. I saw about 2 months ago, maybe it was 3, whenever the release of Ryzen came out, Ryzen 7, and then Ryzen 5, you saw a little turn in market share, and I think it said, there was a big downfall in AMD stock at the end of the last quarter because they really hadn't accounted yet for the sales of those CPUs and for the increase in market share that AMD has had. Now that's turned around. I told my brother to buy some stock, and I think he bought it about $10, and now it's at like 15. So he's, if you put it in 1,000, he's got $1,500. If you put in, 20,000, now you got 30,000 US dollars, or whatever dollars you want to put in there. But I also read just turning it on. It says AMD has grown its CPU user base in a single quarter by 53%. Not that they had a lot of chips out there in the market before that were being used. They really didn't. But that just that's an absolutely massive, cannot be understated, how big of an impact that is having on the consumer CPU market, and will continue to have, again, all the way from low power, tablet designs, thin and light notebooks, gaming notebooks, mainstream consumer PCs, high-end desktops, and in the data center, in the server environment. They're just going to absolutely kill it. And Intel has no viable answer right now. They really did kind of make up. I'm sure Intel, some CEO or CTO somewhere was probably sitting there freaking out a few months ago when he saw the initial announcement for Threadripper, having 16 cores, 32 threads. And again, I've discussed on my channel previously how it's the same socket they're using really for their EPYC platform, the server market, same, pin configuration. If they wanted to, they could even put more cores and more threads on that high-end desktop platform and just squash Intel, which I think is hilarious, obviously. But, I want you guys to know I don't have any hate for Intel. I've used Intel for a long time, but I am glad. I'm not glad for Intel. I'm not glad for AMD. I'm glad they're both doing well as companies, but I'm really glad for us. I'm glad for consumers that we finally have a competitive, market again in the x86 CPU, area of technology that benefits all of us. So, I think it's great. And again, if you've got some money, stick it in AMD stock and watch your money grow over the next year. As long as they have parity in terms of the manufacturing process, which I foresee them having for the next year, if not longer. And again, it really is Intel now versus everybody. If they can't get to 10 nanometer first, or if TSMC gets there, or Samsung, or Global Foundries, or whomever, AMD can go to any of those companies and say, hey, we want to put our chips and have manufactured on your smaller nanometer fabrication process, no problem. They can do that. Whereas Intel, I think their pride's in their way. and they're going to try and get that done, on their own. But they really are now in a race with every other, chip manufacturing company on the planet, which is unfortunate for them. Puts a lot of pressure on their engineers and development teams, etc. Architecturally speaking, again, they had some small efficiency gains with Kaby Lake over Skylake. Those have kind of come back to bite them in the ass, in my opinion, because of the heat issues they're having. Telling folks, don't overclock these chips. Now they've got them on, a supposedly high-end desktop platform with, concessions all the way around. Cut down PCI Express lanes. You've got higher costing motherboards. You've got, chips, the same chips they had on socket 1151, utilizing more power now, probably going to get even hotter. I know they've done some things in there to the heat spreader and stuff like that to kind of help out with the heat. But even the skylake-x parts on that platform are just chugging down power like it's their job. And they're putting out heat like it's their job as well. And this entire thing here is reminiscent, really, to me, of the Athlon 64 and the Athlon 64 X2 back versus the Pentium 4, where again this guy Jim Keller came on board with AMD, designed a phenomenal architecture, and really just caught Intel sleeping. They caught him sleeping. Intel was, balling, doing their thing, and all of a sudden they just got blindsided by superior technology, parity in the manufacturing process, etc. And I know that's a whacked out story, and I didn't really have any kind of logical progression to it or whatever. But I just felt like yapping at you guys for a little while. And letting you know my opinions on the entire, Intel AMD situation at the moment. I just think, that AMD is going to. They're making moves. They've taken back a ton of market share already with just the launch of their mainstream consumer CPUs. Not even all of them. They haven't even launched, the R3s yet. So. With that being said, but then still having to launch, mobile chips, high-end desktop chips, server chips, you're just going to see a massive resurgence. You may even see AMD have more market share than Intel. Now, when it starts getting close, when that line starts getting a little bit too close for Intel to be, they are going to start dropping prices. They're going to have to. And they do have their own manufacturing plant, so they've cut out that middleman there in terms of cost, which is great for them. But the modular nature again of this architecture that AMD has come up with is brilliant. Allowing them to use the same architecture all the way throughout their product portfolio and having very, very easy scalability. Whereas Intel really, their chips are really designed specifically for, various, form factors, various, uses. So, I don't know why my monitors are freaking out. Let me see if it's on a timer. Anyway, it cost more money for them to do that. So, where AMD is able to just add a few more clusters, use the Infinity Fabric to, to kind of tie everything together. My monitors always freak out because there's no Windows certain driver for these monitors. So anyway, but I'll turn them off. Yeah. Anyway, that's the story, and I know this production value sucks. I know this channel sucks compared to a lot of other channels on the internet. I know people aren't turning off their monitors in their background and saying the word all the time, and basically just flying off the hilt like I'm doing right now. But to be honest with you guys, I don't have a whole lot of choice right now. I apologize for the lack of production value, the lack of content on my channel. I am blessed and I appreciate each and every one of you that has subscribed, that has viewed any of these videos. And if you have any feedback for me, you know, I take it in stride. I take it to heart. And I want you to know that I wish I could do more, and that when I'm able to do more, I certainly will. I will do, you know, further due diligence in terms of research on topics that you guys want to see. I will do, you know, a much better job in terms of production value, you know, being able to actually get on the computer and do, you know, real video editing and overlays, etc., things of that nature. So those things will come in the future. But with that being said, again, you know, I appreciate all of you guys and gals, wherever you may be. I hope that you're doing awesome. Hope that you've enjoyed this little tiny, you know, peek, story time, whatever you want to call it, a look back and kind of see how we got to where we are right now in the consumer x86 CPU market, and at least what my thoughts are on it moving forward. And with that being said, I'm going to cash me outside and hit the streets. I'm going to do another video here real quick on Xbox One X. I think there's some misconception and some initial possibly bias getting in the way of what that box is truly capable of delivering in terms of a living room experience. So I'm going to do that video here, probably record it right now, and while I got the chance. And I hope you guys enjoy that video if you watch it. Until next time, hope you're doing well as always. Thanks.